Like all complex things, it's easier to start from the small component and work our way to the more complicated. So that's what we're going to do today. Your energy systems are tied in to your living cells, so we will be using the complex interaction between the cells as our lines of demarcation for this explanation. So let's begin with the single cell. It has a nucleus, it has a cytoplasm, it has a bunch of proteins and enzymes floating around in the cytoplasm. How does chi flow in a cell? Well, we have to remember that consciousness is what guides chi. And so when you look at the way the cell operates, you'd think, oh, the nucleus, that must be the brain. But that is actually contrary to how it functions. The nucleus is more of a library that the cell relies on to make components. The actual consciousness of the cell is throughout the cell. The only structure that can do this is actually the scaffolding of the cell, the microtubules. Therefore, chi will flow through the scaffolding and with it influence the function of the cell. This is how a spiritual consciousness can affect a living material being. When you come to the next level where two cells are interacting with each other directly and they're connected to each other, they have a junction point. And it turns out there's more of that scaffolding material there, more microtubules. When we expand to a grouping of cells, for instance a muscle, during your chi practice you may have noticed that your muscles will tend to tense up as you build up chi flow. Well, the muscles are covered in fascia and they have a high concentration of these microtubules. That's where the chi is flowing. There's a good book used for physical therapy, massage rehab called Anatomy Trains, and in the first chapter the author talks about how he was turned on to the idea of following the connection that goes from the foot all the way up to the head through this fascia due to the diagrams he had seen with acupuncture and the meridian lines. Turns out that the meridians closely follow these fascia connections between the different muscle tissues. Again, we have a high concentration of microtubules. When you then look at an organ, for instance the liver, all the liver cells have the same function. Since they are connected to each other energetically through the flow and interchange of chi, and the consciousness of one interacts with the consciousness of the other one through these junctions, the liver as a whole has a group consciousness of all the cells that make it up. The same goes for the stomach, the heart, the brain, every other part of your body. Every cell that groups with a cell of like kind or groups together into an organ system will share a consciousness because they sum up together to form this consciousness. As these consciousnesses seem to centralize more along the central line of the body, then you look at where the chakras are and you go, oh my goodness, the chakras are actually the focal point of the consciousness of these organ systems throughout the body. This organ system consciousness then attracts energy, and so then you have these centers amassing energy that the body can distribute as needed for the functions it has to perform. When you look at chakras, if you know anything about them, we can start off with the root chakra at the base of the spine, perineum region. That has to do with vitality, with power, strength. That's near the region where you have cells that are ready to go in and create babies. A lot of intention for vitality, strength, and growth there, don't you think? Next up at the navel region, we have the storehouse of energy, the lower dantian. This is the region where you have your intestines assimilating nutrients, and it's also the region where you have your bladder amassing liquid. Moving up towards the middle, you've got the stomach, responsible for digestion and the movement of nutrients into the bloodstream. You've got the pancreas, you've got the liver, the spleen, all performing similar functions together. This is the solar plexus, which seeks to guide energy and assimilate it through the body. At the level of the heart chakra, you have a constant cadence from the heart, and it is this chakra that actually leads the body in functioning at a certain cadence. This tone is expressed as emotional tone at times, where your body is energized when you're happy and it's very lethargic when you're sad. This is also where you have your lungs, where you're inhaling energy that gets transformed into chi that gets carried throughout the rest of your body. So your heart has a natural tendency at that chakra level to absorb, to pull in as well. So the heart feels and pulls in. Going up to the throat chakra, this is where you breathe air, you swallow, and where you speak. Your thyroid is also in this region, which is responsible for energy levels and body metabolism. Your throat chakra is where you express, where you speak, and you can also influence the tone of emotion. While the heart would passively pull in and create that self tone, the throat pushes out that tone to influence others. Great orators, great speakers that can affect your emotions have very strong throat chakras. At the third eye, it's right by your brain and it's right by your eyes. Your eyes are good at watching and looking at things, and your brain is good about thinking about things. This is why the third eye is usually associated with that visualization ability and that ability to comprehend. At the very top, you have your crown chakra, which is more spiritual in nature. At the top of your head, that's where you have the energy flowing that comes up your spine through into your brain, swishes around, and comes back down to the front towards the tummy. It has more of a spiritual quality to it, and this is where your living chi flows through, your human chi. The bodily unit has a certain consciousness as well that is keen on survival and existing in the environment, separate from the environment, and then this produces a field around the body that protects it, your guardian chi, protects it from invaders so that you can stay alive and that you can stay healthy. Now your ego, your I amness, that thinks of itself as being alive and conscious, has its own way of perceiving and thinking and doing. And by manifesting your ego, that consciousness around your body or outside your body, you can actually control the flow of energy around you. By getting in tune with your different chakras and feeling the expression of their intention, that can lead you to a better understanding of how your body works and also how to express the intention of that region with your ego, with your focus, with your consciousness, and other parts that are not necessarily where it normally manifests. When you're doing chi practice and cultivation, it's these consciousnesses that are naturally in the body that you're tapping into. And it's these pathways through those microtubules, through that scaffolding, that you're utilizing to make the chi flow within your body. If you train too hard, you can burn out your channels, so to speak, where the consciousness in those channels will not carry the energy as easily anymore. And you'll have to take a few days to recuperate. In a worst case scenario, you can actually break one of those channels, and then that requires a lot more time to heal, usually with conscious effort. It won't heal by itself. In order to avoid burnout, this is why it's important to practice in a specific method. And that is, you practice one time a day. Don't practice all day long when you start off, one time a day, and make sure you get rest. You get a full night of sleep between each practice session. You don't want to practice so hard that your body doesn't have a chance to adapt to the energy work you're doing, because then you will burn out. If you burn out your dantian, for instance, you might have issues with diarrhea. If you burn out your solar plexus, you might have issues with indigestion. If you burn out your throat, you might lose your voice. If you burn out your third eye, it might become foggy when you're trying to think. If you burn out a channel that goes through your arm, when you go to lift weights, you're just not going to feel that same strength anymore. Like all things in life, it's better to approach things slower, with more caution and more forethought, than to just rush in there and do a lot of things without measuring or thinking, because more than likely you're going to break something you're not supposed to break or cut something you're not supposed to cut. As you can see from my explanation, chi in the human body, this is human chi, what's inside of you, is a natural thing. It's not something that comes from outside. It's something that flows naturally with the natural consciousness you have. As I've said before, you've got over 1 trillion cells inside of you, and each one is a consciousness, and they're all working together in harmony to keep you alive. And that's why it's important to attune your ego with your body's consciousness so that you can be in harmony. Because if there's disharmony, who knows what can happen? Could probably lead to some sort of sickness.